Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and I teach watercolor, and this is a special project called Antique Sewing Machine. If you are new to watercolor and this is your very first time experiencing watercolor, please check out our beginner series on YouTube where I go over supplies, I go over techniques, and really give you the foundation of information that you'll need to be able to do this project successfully. We have Keenan here, he's working the cameras, he will tell me where to look, he'll ask questions along the way, and sometimes we just chit chat because we're friends here and we want you to feel comfortable.
Yes, thank you and welcome.
Okay, so we will be doing this project in 6 steps. So our very first step is we will be painting the body of the sewing machine. The second step, we will be painting the balance wheel. The third step, we will be painting the bed plate. If you're impressed by my sewing machine knowledge, I Googled what all of these things were. So I hope that I'm saying them correctly.
I was impressed. The bed plate.
I know. Okay, step 4, we will be working on these bronze elements here. 5th step, we'll be painting the table. And 6th step, or I'm sorry, the 4th step, let me go back. 4th step, we will be painting the bronze and the spool of thread. 5th step, we will be painting the table. And the last step is just these like last minute details. There's a lot of little knobs and pieces on here that we'll just like kind of go back and finish up. For our supplies here with this kit, you have a round 2 and a round 6 Let's Make Art Classic Series brushes. These are my go-to brushes. I use these 2 brushes for almost all of the watercolor projects. So if you have these brushes and you see all of our tutorials on YouTube, you have just about everything that you need.
You're set.
You're set. So if you don't have these brushes, I highly recommend getting them. They're really great brushes. You can also use the Princeton Heritage Series, round 2, round 6. Those are excellent brushes as well. The paper here is Canson watercolor paper, 140-pound cold press, Canson XL. And we are using 3 watercolors and 1 ink in this project. So our very first color is black. Our second color is honey brown, which is such a good like golden honey color.
I love honey.
Me too. And last color, azure blue. And then you're also going to receive a little bottle in your kit if you get this kit, or if you're interested in doing this without the kit. The last thing that we have is a bronze ink. So I just want to point out that the ink is going to be in liquid form, just like the watercolors, but because it's ink, it does not reconstitute with water. So watercolors, if you like get your brush in the paint and you leave it to dry, you can rinse that color out. The paint will be reactivated with water because it's water soluble. Ink does not work that way. So if you put your paintbrush in the ink, make sure you rinse your paintbrushes really well after, because the ink will dry on those bristles, and once it's dry, it won't come back out. So I just wanted to point out really quick that like there is a separate thing in here from watercolors, so treat it differently. But if you rinse your brushes out right after using it, then you should be just fine. It won't hurt your brushes. So that is a bronze Dr. P.H. Martin iridescent. Look at that.
That is pretty.
Yeah, it's
that
gorgeous.
goes really well with the honey brown.
I thought so too, and it's great because it's going to pop really nice on our black watercolor.
Sweet.
Yeah. I was thinking when I made this project, like, would I be able to get away doing these accents with a watercolor instead of the ink, but no.
Nope.
Nope, couldn't do it.
Not possible.
The bronze is just a nice finishing touch. Okay, so let's trace our outline onto our paper, and then we will do our oath, and then we will get started. So in this kit, or if you get the outline, print it out and then tape it to your watercolor paper. Now your watercolor paper, you're going to want to paint on the side that has a slightly more texture to it. It's a little bit rougher, okay? So I tape it to it using washi tape, but you can use painter's tape, excuse me, washi tape.
I think it's pronounced washi,
washi.
That's it.
That's how it's pronounced. Okay, so then you're going to take your graphite paper and you're going to put your graphite paper dark, shiny side down, and whatever line you make on the graphite paper on your outline will be transferred to your watercolor paper. So I'm going to do a test one just to show you what it looks like here. So the harder you press on your outline, the darker your line will be on your paper. See how dark that is? Now I'm going to do mine dark because I want you guys to be able to see this clearly on the video camera. If you are at home, try and make it as light as you possibly can by doing really light pressure. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm barely pressing down on this, okay? And that you can like barely see a line there.
Oh, barely.
So try and do it whatever you need, okay? Whatever you need to be successful at this. But just keep in mind that watercolor is transparent. So you will see these lines through it. And also tracing, this is going to take a long time because there are lots of little knobs and doodads on here.
Doodads.
That's the technical term, actually.
Yes, I've heard of them, actually.
I Googled that as well.
Wow.
And that's why I'm using a different colored pen, so I know exactly where I've outlined and where I haven't. Also, I just want to point out with outlines, is there a guide for you? I don't want you to look at this like a coloring page where all these different lines and sections, you need to keep them separate and perfect and blocky, because that's not what we're about here. What we're about is just giving you guys the freedom to play and try something new. And a lot of, I mean, like drawing is a skill. Drawing is a skill that takes time, and I just don't want to stop people from trying painting if they don't have good drawing ability. I don't want to limit what you guys can do, and that is why we provide outlines, because we want to give you that the comfort to try something without being scared, right? We want to give you a chance.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm a big fan of outlines because I don't draw well.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like, especially, and this is actually why I like this project so much, is this is such, like, how do I say this? Usually in art, you really need to rely on different value changes to create form and dimension, which is true. But I love painting things that are so obviously a certain item or shape that you don't have to rely on like technical ability so much to be able to tell what it is. So like we could paint this entire thing black and not have any value changes in here, not have any details, like, and you are going to be able to tell that it is a sewing machine. And that is what's so cool about this project is, and even when I'm painting, like no matter what I'm painting, animals, especially, you know, like I love painting flamingos because it gives me room to play and not be perfect. Because if you see a pink bird that's big, people are gonna be like, flamingo.
Flamingo for sure.
They already know what it is. And that just gives you room to kind of play with experimenting with different textures, with different techniques, all that fun stuff. So I just wanna give you a little moment of, this is okay, even if it's your first time painting, this is a great project to start with because it's so recognizable.
Also, I might see a big pink bird and think Big Bird's cousin.
Oh yeah.
You know?
I actually never watched Sesame Street that much.
I only know about Big Bird and Bert and Ernie.
Okay.
I don't think I can, the Count. I can name the Count.
I know Cookie Monster.
Ooh, that's one.
I feel like there was a character named Zoe.
Okay.
That's all I got.
I trust you.
And Elmo.
Oh, that's right, Elmo. Everyone knows Elmo.
Elmo.
Oh, wait, is Kermit the Frog Sesame Street? Or
No,
is that
that's a
different?
Muppet.
Okay.
Okay. Also, I want to say I did little drawings here of the flowers, but we will be painting over this in black. So you might not be able to see these like leaves and flowers through when we get to that spot. That's okay. I'm going to put them in there anyway, just in case. But the reason why I included them on the outline is because sometimes just having a visual of what you're supposed to be putting down when you're painting is super helpful. So when we get to that spot, you can just look at the outline next to you while you're painting, be like, okay, there's a leaf that goes across here, and there's like a kind of funky flower here. So I think that there is like a value in muscle memory a little bit. And so that is what I'm doing here.
Nice.
Okay, I'm almost done with this outline.
Muscle memory is important.
Yeah.
That's how I remember some songs on the piano.
Totally.
I just kind of close my eyes and then my hands just go.
Yeah. Like when I would do piano recitals, because you would have to like play the song over and over and over and over and over and over and over again to like get your muscle memory down. Mm-hmm. If I don't think too hard and I just let my hands go, I can play the song better than if I'm trying to like really think about it.
Or especially even if you have sheet music in front of you.
Yes.
Like, oh wait, does my hand go there? Are you sure sheet music?
Okay, I'm almost done. I'm gonna do one of the spots darker. And then if you like lift up your paper and notice that you missed a spot and you're like, oh dang, I didn't put that line in there, just eyeball it and it's not a big deal. Okay, let's do our oath and then we will get to painting. So if you can raise your right hand and repeat after me. I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise to be kind to myself.
I promise not to compare my work.
I promise not to compare my work.
And I promise to have fun.
And I promise to have fun.
And I like to start that way because, especially when we're trying something new, I think sometimes we have this kind of crazy expectation of ourselves that it needs to be perfect and it needs to be amazing, even if it's our first time, which is why some people are so hard on themselves, especially when it comes to you know, painting or drawing, because they think it's like, oh, I have this skill and I was born with this, or I'm not, and that's just not true. You got to give yourself permission to be bad at something in order to eventually be good, in order to eventually be great. That's just how it goes. So,
fact. Just
a little reminder, this is not about perfection, this is about trying something new. Okay, so we're gonna start by painting our body. I'm going to grab my round 6 and I'm going to use black. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by getting my round 6 wet. I'm going to hit it off the side of the cup so it's damp but not dripping. And then I am going to just paint the left part of the sewing machine using just water.
Just water, huh?
Just water. We're going to do a little bit of wet and wet.
Oh, snap.
So the surface is wet, and then I'm going to take my black, I'm just going to drop it in, and it's just going to spread.
Ooh.
Look at that go.
I'm really excited for anyone that's new watching this because this is my absolute favorite technique.
It is so fun to let it go. And I've noticed with watercolors, and I'm not sure why this is, there are 2 reasons why I really like this technique. One, especially with black, I've noticed that the black stays darker when you put water down first and then drop in the black color than if you were to just paint black with it. The second reason why I like it is when you do wet on wet technique, you're giving yourselves opportunity to create textures, to create blooms, which are kind of like, you can kind of see them right here, these kind of hard edges, and as this dries you're going to see more blooms. And blooms are created just because of different drying times. So uneven water disbursement across your pages makes the paint areas dry at different times, and that's why you get blooms. And sometimes people get really frustrated with that. And I'm here to tell you that that's actually one of the joys of watercolor. And you can't get mad at watercolor for it doing its job. It's supposed to create these interesting textures. It's supposed to create these blooms. And so I like doing this wet on wet technique because it gives me opportunity and my watercolors opportunity to create some really interesting textures and celebrate them. You can appreciate them as you go.
I love blooms.
Me too. Now with watercolor, again, hopefully if this is your first experience with it, you kind of took a look at our beginner series, so you have a little bit better understanding of how things work. But just so you know, if you want a lighter color or a lighter value, you just need to add water to your paintbrush or your mixture or whatever, because that then makes the watercolor more transparent, which makes the white of the paper show through more, which is why the value is lighter. And that's another reason why I think watercolor is so amazing and versatile, because it does so much of the work for you. And so you can see here, especially as we're getting to this area, I put a little sheen on here because I wanted to show that this is a shiny black. So you have to get lighter values in there. And so like when I get to this spot here, I'm gonna do like mostly water with a little bit of paint that's left over on my brush. And that's how you're gonna get that lighter value.
I like that. Pro tip.
Pro tip. And you can see here some interesting textures and stuff going through here. It's so cool. And I'm just gonna let those go. Now, if this is happening and you're like, okay, that's kind of cool, but like, that's too much, I don't like it, you can blend it out. So you can take a damp brush and just kind of work the area back and forth. And there we go.
Nice.
So
this kind of sewing machine makes me think of old pictures where they've been sitting somewhere for a long time and they get more faded.
Yeah.
I don't know why, of just people sitting there with no smiles on their face.
Yes.
I love it.
Have you ever gone to those like Western things where you take pictures, like you're in the old days and you get dressed up in the costumes?
Yes, I think so. I know what you're talking about. I just don't actually remember if I've ever done it myself.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I did it one time in Arizona with my family in Arizona, and it was kind of fun.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Maybe when I was like 12? I can't remember. You know what? I'll get back to you.
Okay. You call your mom right now.
Mom?
Mom, did we ever do this?
No, this is Keenan.
So you can see, so my first layer, I was able to see these leaves kind of through it. I'm doing a darker layer on top because I really want to make sure this black is nice and black. And this one, it's kind of covering up the flowers and the details now. So the darker you go, the more difficult it will be to see those lines through it, and that is okay. Now, let's say you're painting this sewing machine and it's just not getting as dark as you would like, and you're trying really, really hard to make it pure black. One thing I want to point out is it's tricky to get a really dark pure black with watercolor. There's always going to be some light or transparency through it because that is the nature of watercolor. But what you can do is you can let an area dry and then do another layer on top of it after it has dried. Sometimes when the area is so wet and you keep on putting paint in there, it just will disperse and it won't stay really dark. And that's why you want to layer it by doing a layer, totally letting it dry, and then doing another layer on top. That should make it stay a little bit darker than if you were to just keep on trying to add paint when it's wet. But again, don't stress too much about painting this part because, like I was saying earlier, this is a really recognizable form. People are going to be able to tell what's going on here. Okay, now as I get to this kind of sheen part right here, I'm going to want to start dark on the edge. Okay, so I'm putting in my darkest first. And then I'm going to rinse my brush, hit it off the side of the cup so it's a lighter value, so it transitions from dark to light. And you do that a couple of times. So I did that once, I'm going to do it again. Hit it off the side of the cup so it's not dripping. And then kind of transition to that highlight that's in the middle. Just like that.
This is a great project.
Yeah. Also, I just want to say that the more comfortable you are with something, the faster you'll go. And so if I'm going a little bit too fast for you and you're starting to feel frustrated, don't let yourself feel too frustrated. And remember that you can take your time. If you need to pause, if you need to put me on hold for a second so you can finish painting an area, go ahead and do that. I won't be offended. I won't even know because it's on YouTube. And you do what you need to get this project done. And speed will just come with comfort. And also, it just depends on your painting style. Like, there are some professionals out there who really are really meticulous and take their time and, you know, use a small paintbrush for, and there's nothing wrong with that too. So if you just always happen to be a little bit on the meticulous side, there's nothing wrong with that. There's room for that here too. I just am someone who likes to just like go pedal. Even when I was younger and my mom tried to teach me how to sew, I would always just jam my foot on that sewing machine pedal. It would just like take off and she'd be like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Calm down.
And I'm like, this is awesome. So I think that's just my personality. Okay. I still can't sew, by the way.
I actually recently made some stockings for
Did you?
Christmas. I did.
Did you use soda?
I did.
That's awesome.
I know. My sister cut them out and then I sewed them together.
My mom is a huge quilter, and she and my daughter will sew quilts together whenever she comes into town, and it was so cute because the last time she was here, she asked Ella, my now 9-year-old, she's like, I'm gonna run to the store, but can you sew these rows together, these like squares of fabric together while I'm gone? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she like starts doing it, and I was like, Mom, do you want me to show you how to do this? And I was like, okay. And it was so cute because she sat me down. She's like, you're going to want to do this. And she like set it up. And then I did it. And she looked at my stitches. She's like, this is great, Mom. Good job.
Oh my
And I'm like,
God.
this is the best moment. Okay. Sorry. Telling you little stories here.
It was relevant. Thank you.
You're welcome. Got your back. Okay, so that is step one. We painted the body of our sewing machine. I'm going to do one quick thing, and then we're going to move on to step two, which is I realized this left-hand side here I didn't paint. Sorry about that. Putting that right now. If you already painted that, good job. If you haven't painted that, let's just put that in really quick. Okay. And then, like, let's say you're looking at your sewing machine body and you're looking at your own painting and you're like, sorry, I'm going to be painting this dark area really quick while I explain this. But let's say that there is an area that you want to be lighter and you accidentally painted it really dark. And you're like, what do I do? Well, in watercolor, you can't totally erase, but you can lift. So like I'm looking at the left-hand side of my machine right here, and there's a little bit of a highlight right on that edge. But I didn't leave that here in my painting. I just painted the whole thing dark. So what you can do is you can take your round two, get it damp, and then not pick up any paint and just pick up the pigment that's already there, just using water. And it will lighten.
What?
There. So you can put highlights in that way, if you forget to like leave an area, you can try and lift. But if you do it too much, just so we're ahead of a little warning, if you try and do that too much and rub too much and do that, it will start to degrade the paper. So I just want to give you a heads up that if you start to notice that your paper is kind of rubbing off because you're doing that too much, stop, move on to another area and let that go. Okay, so we're going to move on to our balance wheel, which is this section back here. So I'm going to start by switching to my round 2, and this time I'm going to just start with painting black. So I'm not going to put water down first. And kind of where I have these little curves on this wheel, I'm going to put that in black, like so. And then this edge right here is black. And if you need to, also, if you need to like turn your paper, whatever you got to do to feel comfortable, go ahead and do it. I realized I didn't finish that. Sorry about that.
I thought you were just going to leave it at that. You know, whatever you got to do to feel comfortable.
Whatever you got to do. I guess I could have, huh?
It was all right.
Okay. So we have those. And then I'm going to just use, I'm going to switch to my round 6, and using just water, I'm just going to spread out that color and paint in the wheel. I'm going to be avoiding these whole sections though. Now, whenever you do this, whenever you put a dark value down first and then blend it out, you are going to lose some precision. You see how that black is kind of bleeding out? Mm-hmm. That's okay. I do that for 2 reasons. One, because I like the interesting textures that happen when you do that. And 2, I just like the idea of blending out color. I feel like it's a simple and quick way to get value changes and to fill up the space. And then what you can do if, like, let's say you do this and you're like, but I really liked how detailed those lines were, I think it added something really nice. We'll just wait for this to dry and we'll put those back in. Okay, so that's what we'll wait to do that right now. We'll move on to the next area. Now, another thing that you can do if you want is, I've kind of just been working primarily in black right now for these different shines and sheens. But if you look at black, the color itself, and when it's a lighter value, like think of a black dog and think of how a light hits the black dog. If you look at the highlights of that, it isn't necessarily gray. Sometimes it looks blue, sometimes it looks purple, sometimes it looks these different colors. And so I put azure blue in here for people who are maybe a little bit more familiar with color and color theory, that if you wanted to highlight a section on here, instead of leaving it gray, I have a little bit of blue in here and we can kind of do a blue, black, gray. And it just kind of will add color in those highlights. So I'm going to do that on this part right back here, just so you can see what that looks like. So here I mixed some azure blue in with my black, and then I added water. And I just feel like it has this really gorgeous, it's still reading as gray, but it just feels like it has a little bit more color depth to me than just black. You see that?
I like it a lot.
So, like, let's say you're like, gosh, I really love that color. I wish I would have done that on the other parts. Well, do it now. Just do another layer. No big deal. Or maybe you see that and you're like, yeah, that's cool, but like, I can't really tell a huge difference. And I'm really liking how this black is working for me. I don't want to complicate it. Well, then you do not need to do this either. I just want to give you options. Kind of just show you some things that I've learned along the way, and you can pick and choose what you want to do.
Nice, thank you.
You're welcome, Keenan. I'm going to do a little blue on this highlight also. Just because I did it back here, I'm going to do it throughout. Okay. And then going back to this area, I want this to be darker where it's kind of meeting this part right here. So I'm going to do another layer. And then this edge is actually going to be pure black, or just like a really dark value. Now, if this area is still wet, and if you are trying to paint dark right next to it and it accidentally touches, that dark color will like go wherever there's water, it will move. So if that's the case, sometimes what I'll do is I'll leave a really thin white line between the sections, so then I know that they'll stay separate from each other. If this area is totally dry, you don't have to do that. Okay, and then I got a little area here. And then let's paint this part first, and then we'll move on to step 3. So I'm just following kind of my reference photo here. You guys are free. Some people do better just like being able to look at the picture and like understanding what they need to do. So if that's what you got to do, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just going to paint this area in here. I'll add the bronze later. And this part just gets a little bit tricky because there's a little bit of a value change. There's a sheen right here, similar to what was happening here. So I'm going to paint black around it first. And then I'm going to switch to my round 2. Grab some medium values here. So just using a lighter color. Because if you look at metallic things, or not metallic, but like shiny things, and you look at how the light hits them, and I'm even like looking, I wish you guys can see the different studio equipment.
Like a glass jar?
Yeah.
There's
so
an empty one in the top right corner.
That won't show it as well. Here. This is a shiny plastic. And you can see that depending on the angle that I put it, the light is hitting it differently, which is creating different highlights and glares. Okay?
Okay.
So I'm looking at this section right here. And the light on top is creating a white glare right in the middle of it. Right there. Do you kind of see that in the camera? You can't?
No, because the angle is different from the camera than your eyes.
Okay, tell me when you see it like a glare. I wish I could see what you're seeing.
There's a 3-second delay, so tilt it forward. Oh, that's backward.
Forward is towards me.
Are you sure?
No, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. Side cam has a glare. There you go.
Okay, so this is a plastic, shiny plastic, so when the light is hitting it differently, depending, you're going to get some sheen. And so to communicate that in a 2-dimensional form, like painting or drawing, you have to adjust your values. So you have to look at where there is a sheen or a white part, and you leave that white. Can you see it?
Right as I said, the side cam has it. You tilted it just too much so there's no sheen at all. So it's just like a black piece of plastic.
Well, I've been trying to do it back and forth, hoping that like it will catch. That was me trying to be a really excellent teacher, and it just didn't work, and I'm sorry about that.
It's hard to show what you see with cameras that see differently from you.
Yeah, that's okay. If you have something in front of you.
Excellent lesson, though. That's a great object lesson. Thank you.
Okay, so so basically that's just what I'm trying to paint in here. Is there's some highlights and there's some shadows, and it's because the light is hitting the shiny part differently than the other parts. Okay, I'm gonna go back in and put in my black details in here since I kind of blended them out. Doing another layer on some of the areas. And then I'm gonna go into these, the little holes that are through it, and add a little bit of shadow in there.
Is this a specific brand of sewing machine?
Probably, but I
can
don't
only name
know
like
it.
2 brands.
I don't know.
Singer?
There's a Singer.
Is it Brother or is that a printer?
I think there's Brother. I think there's also Baby Lock.
Oh yeah, Baby Lock's one.
And isn't there one called like Jane or something? This is where it would have been really nice to have Jenny.
Yeah, that would
Because
be
she'd
great.
be like, let me tell you about all of these things. And I'd be like, Jenny, thank you for being so amazing. Okay, so there we go. There is our balance wheel painted.
I'm glad you Googled that.
Me too. Okay, and let's just do some of these like knobs. So I'm just going to take water and add it to some of my black over here to make a really light gray, because these are actually silver, these little knobs and areas on here. So I'm just going to paint them a gray. And if you get some different values in there where some areas are lighter and darker, that's okay. I'm gonna finish painting this. And there's a lot of little pieces to this little painting here. So if you might not see something right away, and then like when you're painting a different area, you'll look and you'll be like, oh shoot, I forgot to paint that area. Don't stress. Just put it in whenever you see it. And I'm sure I'll be doing the same thing, where I'll be like, oh, I got this little area to do still. Now when we get to these kind of small little bits here, I'm not focusing so much on doing a lot of depth and detail to them. I'm kind of just doing hints. A little brush stroke here, a little brush stroke here, just giving the viewer enough information so they know that there is something there, little pieces to this machine, without having to really flesh out what it is. And that's also kind of the joy of painting and being a creator, is because you are the one, you get to decide what's going to be included in this painting and what is not. And you don't have to necessarily even go off of realism. You don't have to look at a photograph and do it exactly. You are the creator here. And so I kind of really love that freedom, because maybe I'm painting whatever it is, a person, a sewing machine, an animal, whatever, and I'm like, I don't know if I want to paint this spot, or I don't know if you know, will it take away if I don't include the little bit that's right here? Well, then I won't include it. So it's up to you. And I really love and value that freedom. So I'm just kind of using like a gray in my round 2 to almost like outline some of these areas here. If it's easier for you to even use a pen to do that instead of a paintbrush, please feel free. You can use a little micron pen. Those work really great with watercolor. Just doing little detail areas. Sometimes if you're not familiar with paintbrushes, they're really, it's helpful to use just a little pen. Got a little bit more control that way. Okay. All right, it's looking good. All right, I'm gonna move on to the bed plate now. We're on step 3, which I know that we've kind of been working on this a long time, and we're only halfway through, but the rest of the steps actually go really, really quick. So I really think that the hardest part is behind us, so you guys are doing awesome. So for the bed plate here, I'm just gonna take that blue and black mixture because I wanna make like a lighter gray. And using my round 6, I'm just going to do horizontal brush strokes across this plated area. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. They can be loose, they can be uneven. You can let these brush strokes kind of be seen a little bit. Just like that. And then kind of on the ridge here, I'm gonna do a little black lip to kind of show that it's poking up or is like a different plane than the table. It's just gonna kind of pop it up a little bit. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfectly straight line. You can see I'm kind of like sketching it in. If you want to do that with your round 2 instead of your round 6, you can, absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. I feel pretty comfortable getting a thin line with my round 6, so I'll kind of use them interchangeably. Okay, that was step 3. Now we're moving on to step 4, which is where we're going to start putting in some of our bronze elements and our thread. Let's go ahead and do our thread first, and then we'll move on to our bronze. So for this thread, I have this really pretty like blue. This azure blue is super saturated. You can see that here. I want to tone it down just a little bit. So I'm going to add a tiny bit of honey brown. That's going to turn it kind of like a green. So I'm going to put some blue back in to make it more turquoisey. And then a little bit of black to desaturate it. So now I have this really pretty like desaturated turquoise blue. That was a plot
twist I was not prepared for.
Color mixing is fun, and I love giving you guys the option to color mix because maybe you like really bright blue, or maybe you're painting this for a friend and her favorite color is green. Then you could just mix a green and do green thread. So I just want to give you guys the option. So I have this desaturated blue. I'm going to put it on the left-hand side of my thread here, spool of thread. And then I'm going to take water, kind of blend it out on the other areas. Across here, like that. And then this is a tricky, let's leave that for the last step, putting the thread in. Now we're going to do the wood part on the spool. This is a big reason why we have honey brown here. So you can just use straight honey brown if you want it to be like a really golden wood color, or you can mix a little bit of black in there to desaturate it. But just so you know, honey brown tends to lean a little bit green when you add black to it. Just giving you a heads up.
What? That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's just the type of brown that it is.
Wow.
Okay, so there's my honey brown, and then I'm just going to grab some water and blend it so the left-hand side is a little bit of a lighter value than the right.
Did you know that if you consume local honey, it will help with allergies?
I heard that was a myth.
I don't believe that it's a myth.
I have heard that, and then I feel like I read that that's not true, but I could be wrong.
Well, now I'm going to have to research it.
Okay, research it. Okay. So there's my cute little spool of thread on the top, just like that.
Beautiful.
Okay, now we can do like the little bronze bits, which I think are super fun, and I don't want you guys to stress about this. This is just really loose, loose little details here. So I'm gonna put some of this ink on, oops, slipped. Put some of this ink on my palette, and I'm gonna twist my paper up because I'm gonna do my little leaf first. And you guys don't have to do a floral leaf pattern. You guys can do whatever it is that you want. Maybe you want to write a name here across this. This is your painting. You guys can totally decide. I'm just going to do like loose, gosh, and it's so shiny and beautiful.
Oh, that is bright.
Do you see how bright?
I love that. And it's an excellent angle with the lights on there for these camera angles. OM goodness.
And then I'm going to do some little flowers. So I'm just going to kind of like start one petal at a time. And you guys can do, oh, I spilled a little bit here. So I got my wrist in bronze. I don't know how I did that, but you can see I have a little bit of dots here. This happens in watercolor all the time. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to like try and understand how that dot happened. Make sure I don't do it again, and then I'll have to just problem solve. Because this is ink, if this wasn't ink, I would be able to lift this up fairly quickly. But because this is ink, I don't think this will lift up. So I'll just have to decide what to do with that. But I'll come back to that later. So I'm going to keep going with my flower. Here, and I'm going to do another flower down here, kind of next to each other. And you could even do like little dots coming off, like just really delicate details here and there if you want. And then I'm going to have, you can see some of this one coming through still, this little leaf
branch
detail.
Of bronze.
Yes, and if you're not comfortable doing thin lines, that's covered in our beginner series on how to do that. So please feel free to take a look if you need a little extra help. And then there's a little bit of ones down here. I love doing the bronze ink on the really dark parts because it just shows up a little bit better, because it's on a really dark value. What can I do here? The tricky thing is that it's off the black part, right?
Can it be something in the background?
Maybe.
Like a small vase?
A little tiny vase. What about a little thimble?
What if something's sitting on that handle?
Oh.
Like a bronze stick man.
I love that idea. That is so great. Let me paint this little metal part in here. Metal plate.
I've got a little bit of information for you about honey.
Okay.
So there have been several studies done. One in 2002 was done, and there was inconclusive.
Really?
Yes. There wasn't necessarily any differences in people's allergies. I don't know how long the study was, because another study was conducted over the course of 8 weeks, and a small amount of honey was ingested daily, and they increased the amount, and that improved the person's allergies.
Really?
Yes.
So you were right.
Well, I think we were both right, because
one study did it and one did not.
right, and probably depending on the person, the location, there's probably 1,000 factors.
That's true. Gosh, don't you just love that little metallic detail on this? I love using a little bit of metallic ink on watercolors. It just makes things pop. Sorry, you were telling me something really interesting, but I'm just...
That was pretty much it.
Really in love with what's happening here. Okay. And then there's a little bit of detailing here, but I wanted to make it light. I didn't want the bronze that's happening on the bed plate to stand out more than what's happening on the sewing machine. So I actually added a little bit of water to my ink just to like thin it out and do little kind of leaves and details on this part. So you guys can do this part, or you can even leave it off, or you can make it as detailed as you want, but I just doing little hints of color here. Okay, I think I pretty much got that. Okay, let's rinse our brush. and then we'll go to step 5, which is the table. We're almost done here. So for my table, I'm going to use this honey brown. And I'm going to start by putting in dark value first, which means a lot of paint, and then I'll just blend it out using water. So I have my honey brown, and I'm just going to go across here, kind of sketchy. And you can see that you can see my brush strokes, they're leaving kind of a rough texture, which I think is gorgeous.
Agreed.
And so I'm just going to kind of like outline some of this stuff first, and then rinsing my brush, hitting it off the side of my cup so it's just damp, I'm just going to start spreading out this color. Now these are liquid watercolors, which means they're dye-based as opposed to pigment-based. And the benefit to them is that they're vibrant. You can see that this little table here is popping with color. And that, for me personally, I love vibrant colors, especially if you're looking at, you know, pinks and purples and blues and different things like that. So I just wanted to just acknowledge here that this is a very, very bright color. And I like that about it.
I do too.
Okay. And it's just going to kind of like blend off the table. I don't have like a very hard edge of where it stops. It just kind of piddles off. Now, if you want to mix this honey brown with a little bit of black to tone down the color, you can, but it will make it turn a little bit green. Just giving you a heads up, which I like the color green, and there are browns that do tend to lean green. If you look at browns, all colors tend to have underneath colors, right? So like this matte, this is a blue matte, but it has gray undertones. Okay, so like this yellow here, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to show this, but it has orange undertones. It's a really warm yellow. And so like, I just want to say that if you look at browns, some of them lean red, some of them lean gray, some of them lean green. And so there's nothing wrong with that. It's very true to the colors that we see with our human eye. Okay, so there's our table. And now we're getting to the last step, which is our details. So this is where we're going to put in our thread. So I'm going to take some of this like gray turquoise that I mixed earlier that's still on my palette, and I'm just going to put in this line. Now I want to say that when you're doing thin lines, it's really, really tricky to follow an outline. So sometimes what I'll do is like, I see where my outline is, but I'll just like be really confident and do a stroke really quick, because when you try and slowly paint something, your hand is just going to shake. That's how it goes. And so if you want it to be smooth, you just got to approach it with confidence and be like, all right, I'm just putting in some thread right here, and I'm just going to go for it. And I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, go. Just like that.
Nailed it.
And so if it doesn't follow your outline exactly, that's okay. I have pencil marks on my paintings all the time. It doesn't really bother me. And I forgot what I was going to say. If some areas are thicker than others, that's okay too. Do the same thing through here. And then this little guy is going to come out, and I'm going to do a little curly Q at the bottom here. So I'm going to go.
Oh, nice.
Curly Q. Just like that. It's just a cute little doodad. Okay. And then now we're on our last step, right? We're just doing details. So I'm looking at this little metal plate here. I'm going to outline a little bit. And sometimes outlining is a nice way to give the hint of form without having to fully do different values and all of this stuff. It's also a reason why I really enjoy illustration, because you're able to define things quicker. And it doesn't have to be like perfect or realistic. And so I'm kind of just going through and seeing where I've made marks. Here, I left out a little chunk, so I got to paint that really quick. Like that.
The old needle holder or needle thread.
That can't be right.
Holder.
Just kind of finishing up any odds and ends, and I'm still trying to think. I'm going to add a little, I almost want to add like a little handle up here. Or, nope, changed my mind. I'm going to add atmospheric like dots and glares a little bit to give it kind of like a magical sense. So I have some bronze dots here, and I'm just going to do more. So sometimes what I'll do when I do something accidentally, if you do more of the same thing that you did accidentally, it looks like it's on purpose.
Yes, I like that.
And that is kind of how, and so I do little dots. I'm also going to add a little bit of a star. Boop, 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 boop. Now again, I only have to do this because my wrist got caught in this. If you didn't get your wrist caught in this, you don't have to do this part. Or maybe you didn't get your wrist caught in it, but you really like how these little dots are kind of starting to feel like you're making something magical on here. Well, then you can add them. You can do whatever you want. But I'm going to do them across this side too, because again, it will make it feel like it's on purpose. I'm going to do different size dots. And I'm going to do some down here to be like, look, we're sewing something really pretty and magical over here.
We're sewing friendship.
We're sewing love. We're sewing, and let me tell you, sewing and quilting, that is a labor of love. It's such an investment in time and skill, and I don't know. I think it is. I think Jenny does say it's like you're wrapping love around you, you know, a quilt, which I think is true.
It's true. I agree.
Isn't that, I really like that. Sorry, Keenan. I liked your thinking on the stick man, but this has given me joy.
No, this is perfect.
There we go. Oh my gosh, that is so cute. That was a happy accident.
That really is.
I love how that turned out. Okay, that's it. That is our sewing machine project. So I hope you guys had fun with this. I hope you guys played with the textures. I hope you really allowed watercolor to do its thing. And I hope you give this a shot. If you had fun doing this, skill comes with practice. And if you really want to learn watercolor, all you have to do is put in the time. And even if your goal at the end of it is not to be the best painter in the world, there is still value in creating something and trying something and having fun. So maybe art and painting for you is just a time to play. And that is all it needs to be. And there is value in that as well. So I hope you guys had fun with this. I hope you keep trying other things and try to paint other stuff and just have fun along the way. If you need any of these supplies, you can find them at letsmakeart.com. If you want to see what other people are making in our community, we have a watercolor Facebook group that's for the sole purpose of you guys being able to share your work. That's called Let's Make Art Watercolor. And if you're on Instagram and you want us to see what you're making, which I would love to see it, you can tag us at Let's Go Make Art or hashtag Let's Make Art. And if you're interested in more watercolor tutorials, we release them weekly. So you can just subscribe to our YouTube channel, get a little notification whenever we do a new tutorial, and paint with us. So Keenan, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we'll see you guys later. Bye.